Hi, I'm Rick Bjella, the artistic director for the San Antonio Chamber Choir, and we're most excited to present the musical world of Jake Runestad. And we are pleased to have in the virtual studio Jake and his partner in crime, a poet, Todd Boss. Welcome, gentlemen. What city are you in at the present moment?
I'm Todd Boss. I'm the poet. I'm in Santa Monica, California.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah, and I'm currently at home in Minneapolis, where it's
okay.
beautiful. It's sunny and getting warm, which we're very happy about.
Yeah, it's same in Appleton. It's going to be 72 or something today. So I am in shorts as we speak.
Lovely,
It's a very good
lovely.
thing. I'm always interested in how a composer and a poet meet for the very first time and what motivates and is generated in this collaboration as you started way back when. And
I moved to Minneapolis in the fall of 2011 after I finished grad school. And a friend of mine, Mark Campbell, is a librettist. And when I moved to Minneapolis, he said, I read a poet there named Todd Boss. I read him in the New Yorker. You should look him up. And so when I got to Minneapolis, I went to Todd's website and sent a message, and we met for coffee. And over the next couple years, I'd go to some of his poetry readings, and we'd grab a drink or hang out. And then at one point, we talked about the possibility of collaborating on something. And so the first two pieces that we worked on, one was Waves, which we wrote for California State University Fullerton and Rob Eistad. And then another one was called And So I Go On, for Jonathan Talberg and Edie Copley, in memory of Herman Aguilar, a choral conductor who died far too soon. And so, yeah, over the years, we've done 10 collaborations now together, and
wow.
it's been just a joyful experience of creating art. What did I leave out, Todd?
Yeah, that's about it. Poets don't get to collaborate very often. Poets tend to be very isolated, sort of working in their little worlds. And it's really a joy to find somebody who wants to collaborate with a poet and build something out that's maybe not the traditional way that a poet would work. So it's really been important for Jake and I to develop not just a working relationship, but a trusting friendship as well, where we can really challenge one another and push one another to try things that we don't initially bring to the table. So it's a really healthy collaborative relationship that we have.
Todd, I was just watching your I think 2021 presentation poetry at the Dolly,
Mm.
and was really taken with several of your poems, especially the Voices of St. Martin's, the Nine Voices of St. Martin's, and so many of your other things. For both of you, I feel such a visceral response to your writing, both in terms of your music, in terms of your poetry. And I wonder if you could react to this quote in the first movement of Argento's Peter Quince at the clavier, written by the poetry of Wallace Stevens. He writes, "Music is feeling, then, not sound."
I mean, I think I absolutely agree with that. When it comes down to it, sound essentially is vibration. So it is feeling, in a very kind of tangible, literal sense of the word. But also it speaks to us in a way that's so different from anything else. The immediacy that we can feel, the way we associate memories with music that's so deeply wedded to each other. And so, yeah, I think there's such power in what music does.
And I should also tell our audience that you just won the Emmy, both of you, for the Earth Symphony, performed with chorus and orchestra, some 35-minute work. It's an amazingly profound work. Congratulations to both of you on that front. Very,
Thank you.
very exciting. Todd, do you have
Thank
any
you.
reflections on that?
It does make me remember some of our earliest conversations, Jake and I, when we were first getting to know each other, and the process for me of learning how to write for choir, which was a really different thing. I don't consider any of my texts for Jake poems in and of themselves. They're texts. They don't really work all alone on the page. I haven't yet published one, I don't think, in any of my books, and that's because they really require the music to deliver them. They're written specifically for that medium, and I think one of the things that Jake taught me early on as we were learning together was how to invest, for example, a line with more vowels than it would normally necessarily need to carry, because it's the vowels in a choral work that really carry the emotional content, of the sentence. And I had never really considered that before. So
Huh. Huh.
so all of a sudden I had this new tool that I hadn't really ever imagined using. And what happens is that you get to then sort of pack emotion into a line differently than you normally would, because you're thinking about what can be done with the vowels, not just the vowels as of themselves.
You had alerted us, Todd, to the idea that you are challenging each other. When has the friction met the road most directly? I think it's interesting for our audience to just realize that this just doesn't, creation doesn't come out of complete harmony as well. So I think it'd be interesting to just discuss a couple moments where it was not so congenial, shall we say, necessarily.
Well, Jake and I have, as I said, a very trusting relationship. So there's never been, I don't think, and maybe Jake can remember differently, but I don't remember any.
Any
We've not,
fisticuffs?
there have never been any bloody noses related to our work. I think, like, here an example is in cello songs.
Yeah.
There's in the third movement, Winter. There's a line: when a dead tree crosswise in a living tree's arms lies balefully bowing in the glade. I pushed back on crosswise. When a dead tree crosswise in a living, because to me it felt like it interrupted the phrase.
Uh-huh.
And Todd pushed back on that and said, no, it's needed because what that word does is it actually crosses through the line to give us that feeling of something leaning, being kind of impeding the life of something. And so I pushed back on it for a little while, but then ultimately, trusted him on that and continued with it, and it worked, and it worked beautifully.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's one example.
Anything from your perspective, Todd, where you go, I hate this, or I just have to change this?
I am no music expert. Jake's probably more of a poetry expert than I am a music expert, because he really reads poetry. He reads a lot. So I have respect for his ear where literature is concerned. My ear where music is concerned is not very sophisticated. So I appreciate music, and I love what Jake does with the work that we make together and his own projects. But by and large, I'm just content to be surprised with whatever he does with it. As far as I'm concerned, as long as the words are right, I'm happy.
So, how long does it take you to write a poem? I mean, I
Yes,
know some things come quickly and some things do not. So maybe it's an ambiguous question to ask, but I think
sure.
it's interesting.
Yeah, the text for the piece you commissioned came about probably within a couple of hours, but that was after a good maybe 3 weeks of conversation with Jake back and forth about some of the parameters of it and how to approach it, and a little bit of research. We shared some articles and books, and I did a lot of thinking about how to interpret the sounds of wolves. We knew we wanted it to be about wolves howling. At first, the conversation in my head was about, well, what are wolves saying when they howl? How do I put words to the howling of wolves? And I've done a lot of reading and have some nature books and books about animal communication. And Jake had been reading something, so we shared back and forth. And tumbled that around for a little while. And it wasn't until a drive in California's Central Valley that I was kind of mulling this over on a long valley drive. And it occurred to me that really what they're doing is asking questions. They're not making statements maybe so much as asking questions. And that idea opened up a landscape for approach.
Could you just read the poem?
Yeah.
Howl, you know, this is our commission work that will be presented on May 6th and 7th. And we're very excited to have it read for the first time.
I'll just set it up real quickly by saying that the opening words of each sentence are apostrophes. So how will you know is apostrophized as how you know. And the next line too, who will you follow, is who will you follow, but it's apostrophized. So you'll hear that as I read it. How will you know where you need to go? Who will you follow through the snow? Are our hours hours alone? How are you more than the store of your bones? Nobody knows we howl in vain under the thunder and the roar of the rain. Is that the end of it, Jake?
Yeah.
I wrote more, but that was the final. That's the final.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty profound. Just that one verse. It's just really remarkable. I was taken with how you have all of these vowels, like we were just talking about, go, alone, and so on. All of that snow, all of that finishing the first 4 lines, and then we have the 2 A vowels to end the last 2 lines of the poem.
Yeah. In poetry, we call that an arrival. It's just sort of a signal to the ear that something has changed, something has brightened, something has lifted, and that the end of the piece is kind of signaled by that. It's out of step with the rest of the vowel world of the poem, but that's deliberate, and it's just designed to kind of lift us out of that a little bit and give us a little relief from it.
And musically, that changes essentially from a darker, more closed vowel to a brighter world. So sonically, I can play with that, right? It's really difficult to sing an oo vowel on a high note just because of the mechanics of the voice. So by opening that vowel, it allows for the voice to go higher, which can then bring us to a more climactic point. So musically, that helps as well.
Yeah. And speaking of the music, I was so interested on your decision to end the work in this aleatoric fashion with these solos just howling, you said a diatonic 7th, in terms of your ear perceiving that this will work and giving the singers a lot of flexibility. They can start on different notes. And so do you have an end sound in mind, or does this change with each performance of the same composition?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it will. I think that's one of the beauties of having some of that aleatory or openness at the end, where it can change in every performance. But really, I've been fascinating with wolves for a while, and some of my more recent works has kind of been giving voice to things that don't traditionally have a voice, or that we think of not having a voice. Our Earth Symphony is giving voice to Mother Earth. This piece is giving voice to wolves, and I wanted us to consider how profound and beautiful the language of wolves really is, and elevating it to a certain level. And so I knew that I wanted to use howling in the piece at some point musically. And so throughout the opening and the kind of bulk of the piece, there are these howling gestures. But then it's not until the very end that we actually get 8 soloists who give us a full-on what's called a chorus howl, which is when there's one wolf that kind of begins with a long howl and then others begin to respond, and it creates this ethereal world of howling at different rates, different times. And so I knew I wanted to close the piece with that, so we could just sit in that world of howling voices and consider the beauty of it. So yeah, I knew the piece would work to that moment.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. I can't wait to hear what the singers come up with, and giving them the free bound to explore their own dimensions of how they want to make that sound real. We're going to end this segment right at the moment, but there are going to be three more where we talk about three more of the pieces that we are performing in the future. And thanks for joining us.